Hey guys, Nathan here from PRP Physio. So we've got a few soccer clubs looking at starting pre-season training and getting into trials and everything like that. It's very quickly going to wind around to the start of the season with a lot of clubs wanting to kick off sort of that February-March period for a lot of their seniors. So I just wanted to jump in today and just have a quick chat with you guys just about probably my top 3 things to make sure that you get through pre-season healthy, fit, and ready to go for the start of the year. So researchers found that the more pre-season sessions you can get in, the less likely you are to get injured throughout the season. So we really don't want players sort of in and out with small niggling injuries, or leaving something that becomes a bigger issue and then you miss 6 sessions. That really does sort of put you back behind where the rest of the squad is at. In terms of their fitness levels, makes that a little bit more difficult to get that cohesiveness with the team and get everyone working together. So probably my first big one is assuming your players have had their off-season and they haven't done a whole lot of much, is a gradual build-up. Unfortunately, there's a lot of clubs and a lot of players that want to go into it and go hard and fast straight from the get-go. This is probably one of the riskier strategies that you can take. So what you'll often see is people will go from doing not much over their holidays and they're literally going to go straight into repeated sprints, a lot of aerobic work, a lot of trench progression work, add in some gameplay, and that load absolutely just spikes through the roof. Now players might be able to do this for 1 week, 2 weeks, but more often than not you're going to get players starting to break down around that sort of end of week 2, week 3, week 4 mark. So really being able to build that load up either through the start of the pre-season and take that little bit longer to do it, or you're going to have to give your players something to do in the off-season to maintain that load, maintain that strength, particularly that high-speed running load, so that they can come into pre-season already at a certain loading level where they can tolerate, if you want to throw that high-level stuff at them in terms of repeated sprint efforts, high-level aerobic work. Probably one point I should add is that a higher aerobic capacity has been found to show that it will reduce your risk of injury with anaerobic work, so your repeated sprint efforts. So it may be an idea that maybe in the off-season you give your athletes a little bit more of an aerobic-based program where they can keep that cardio base going with a little bit of anaerobic and sprint work in there, so they can keep that ticking along. So then you're not having to play catch-up on both fronts. You can just gradually build up that sprinting load. Probably tip number 2 is instituting an injury prevention program. Looking at a lot of different sports, a lot of national bodies starting to come out with their own programs. Soccer has a FIFA 11, netball has their program, AFL has a program. There is a little bit more of a generalised program, which is an American program, I believe, called the PEP program. That's PEP. Most of these programs realistically look at the research and go, okay, in soccer, what are the most prevalent injuries and what exercises or what strategies have been found to show the best levels of reduction of risk for sustaining those injuries. You could either implement this in a couple of different ways. You could make this part of your warm-up and getting players going for the session, or you could make it an individually prescribed home session that they have to do throughout the week. Could be a little bit tough to get buy-in from players at times, but if you set that expectation from players from the get-go, you should be able to get some good follow-through on that. More often than not, what these programs look at is strengthening mobility, flexibility. I find generally across the board, probably some of the things they miss is that running load. Obviously, this is going to come down to coaches and session planning and what does a coach want to achieve during their session. But I find often, and players will often report this to me, that they don't find they're going to get up to those higher speed levels during a session that they would achieve during a game, and probably not for as long. So we probably need to find a way to supplement that in that training program and that would ideally be something that forms part of your injury prevention program. And I think it forms nicely as part of a warm-up as you get players going and moving into the session. They essentially work towards that higher speed running work. You can get that load into them, and then you can finish off with your game-specific training work. And number 3, I sort of mentioned at the start, but treat niggling injuries before they become bigger ones. Quite often you see players wanting to break into the team. They will leave that tight calf that sticks around for a little bit longer. They find they get hampered at training a little bit more, and then eventually it might progress to something like a calf strain, and that's going to put them out for 3-4 weeks, however long that might take to rehab. And that's obviously a worst case scenario, but you're looking at something that could have been managed early on, maybe drop that training load a little bit to then look at, okay, now we can build up, now we can build the strength, now we can build the plyometric capacity of the calf and the Achilles tendon. Instead, players sometimes can leave it that little bit longer, and that makes the rehab process that much longer in the end of the day. So, for example, I have one player a couple of years ago. He had a big toe injury, sustained it towards the end of the year, but probably didn't report it to me for about 5 weeks, at which point he was now struggling to take part in the game and kick a ball, and it was hard to settle it down because we were on our way into the finals and he wanted to play, but with the functional limitations that he had because of that toe injury that had been left for so long in the background, it was difficult to try and get in there. And I believe he played in the grand final, he came off the bench, and he definitely wasn't 100%. But I believe if we'd addressed that earlier through the player approaching me and reporting their concerns, that would not have been an issue leading into the grand final. So any questions, any comments, feel free to drop something in or shoot us a message. Otherwise, hope you guys have a great week.